So the team of Dune Awakening, the devs have gone ahead and teased some new information that has come out, talking about specifically the classes and potentially builds. How can you make your builds within the Dune universe? So let me explain. We already know that there are going to be essentially 4 classes, mentor styles at release. That's what's going to be focused on, which is the Swordmaster, the Bene Gesserit, the Trooper, or the Mentat, the 4 essential disciplines, let's call it that. Now, on a recent Twitter post, they've gone ahead and covered that you can mix and match these how you will, what you think is going to be the best suited for your specific build and abilities. Now, I could see this being spun one of 2 ways. And again, this is all just teasing information and me building off of this. Don't come back at me 6 months down the road and say, hey, you got this wrong. I could have. I'm just taking an educated guess. So the first way that they could spin this, and the way that I think would be more fun in my opinion, is that at your beginning character selection, when you're in front of the Reverend Mother and you decide which discipline you go down, that you're essentially locked within that class. So if you are a Swordmaster, the Swordmaster will have its own unique set of abilities, only a couple, like 3 or 4 that make it stand out in comparison to the rest of the classes. And then from there, you can learn the different mentor, we'll say, disciplines, so the Bene Gesserit, the Trooper, and the Mentat, as you explore out into the world of Arrakis. And then from there, you will be able to mix and match the way that you see fit. On this Twitter post, I went ahead and said that, yeah, I think I might be interested into a Swordmaster with some, but the Trooper looks cool. The Dune team responded and said, why not top it off with some Mentat abilities for your build? And again, that's the idea of this build being fleshed out, kind of teased by the devs. Why I think that would be really cool is because then you have like your uniqueness. Oh, well, you're a Swordmaster, but then we have a pool of individual abilities that you'll be able to progressively unlock throughout your playthrough. That's pretty cool, and then you can mix and match and do what you need to. The other side of it is that essentially your starting class, so whatever you choose, so out of the 4, that is your starting abilities. You get like 2 or 3 abilities that are to start, and then you can grow as you see fit. And then once you get towards endgame, there's going to be all sorts of mix and match capabilities across the realm. Now, I think that's more plausible, in my opinion, that there will be a lot more flexibility across the board. There will be a lot more, we'll say, differencing abilities that you'll be able to mix and match and put together. That makes more sense in a sandbox style game. And that was not a pun because it's Dune and it's Arrakis. It's not a pun, but it fits. And essentially the idea is that the classes are going to have a lot of flexibility and a lot of combination. Personally, I like the idea of having somewhat of a little bit of uniqueness. And I really draw the comparison of Guild Wars, the original Guild Wars, where you essentially could start out, say for example, you started out as a warrior, but then you went and learned how to be a warrior/ranger. And you picked up some of the abilities from the ranger class, but you don't get all of the abilities. Only a pure ranger would be having access to, we'll say, other specific skills. I personally think that'll be a lot of fun. That keeps a class identity within that realm, and then also still kind of applies, like if we're talking about group composition, especially if we're talking in an MMO where there's lots of players. And of course we have our bio labs, which are essentially our dungeons, and then open PvP. It would be interesting to have that kind of like isolation. Now, again, this could all be just teasing and really where we're putting it. But I do think that there is some validity within that second statement, which is that it's essentially completely open. You mix and match the build to the way that you want to be, and then you're good to go. That doesn't even really cover all the crafting for the vehicles and the, we'll say, the ornithopters and everything else that you're going to be able to implement onto the battlefield. So you might be the very best Swordmaster style player in the entire Dune Arrakis, but you're not going to be able to stand up to a full-on tank or, well, an ornithopter with rocket launchers. Like, that's the idea. But it would be really interesting to see how they implement it. I am actually very excited, hoping that they do add a little bit of uniqueness across the board. Now, the big question that I'm going to have, especially looking at these builds, are what is the amount of skills that we can field at any given time? Like, what kind of build can we actually implement? And given the space constraints, how many abilities can we have on our action bar at any given time? Now, there's probably an answer already, and unfortunately, we may or may not know that all together, but that is something interesting to think of. Another post has recently been released that is teasing the idea of how the gameplay will go and how the interaction between players. So for those of you who are a solo style player, someone who likes to be out on their own, do their own thing, you are going to have a home here. Of course, this being an MMO and a survival crafting MMO centered around houses and we'll say guilds and larger consortium of players, it makes sense that there is strength in numbers. However, being able to play on your own, and I'll be the first one to admit I'm quite guilty of this at some point, is sometimes the best thing that you can do. I personally sometimes log in at random times and only have 10-15 minutes, not enough time to really organize a certain play. Now, it seems like they're going to allow you to still be able to progress your character, still grow in that manner. However, you don't necessarily need to log in and only play with other players. Again, I want to stress, this is an MMO, all right? We're talking massively multiplayers. There's going to be a lot of people here. The idea of it is that you are interacting with other players and you are joining them with whatever effort you guys are working on, whether it's to find a spice blow or potentially completing guild missions or contracts that are associated with a larger amount of players. So I want to keep my, we'll say, mindset open in this regard, as I'll be the first one to admit I'm not someone who has a lot of time to play, sit down and play. And usually if there is anything organized I do in game, it's usually spur of the moment. So I'm hoping for a lot of flexibility there. However, they are hinting that this is going to be available in more, we'll say, more suited for multiple players, but you still can have those solo capabilities. And in previous posts and conversations, I've seen that they will allow you to essentially be able to be whoever you really want to be in the Dune Arrakis world, in the universe. So if all you want to do is go out and collect materials so that you can build your buildings and do what you need to, that seems like something that you'll be able to do. This is all very exciting stuff. And again, I want to stress that this is just a tease of information. We don't know if it's confirmed. I don't have access to the closed beta. I haven't signed the NDA, so I don't really know anything other than what we are seeing out there in the open world, or on Twitter, basically. But make sure you guys go ahead and like the video, you add a subscription. I will be hounding Dune Awakening for every bit of information that we can possibly get as we move closer to a potential launch date. That is the idea. If you guys would like, you can check out the latest bit of information on Dune that I have recently posted. You can check that out right here. Aside from that, stay caffeinated, sleepers.